CloudFlare has become an enormously popular service. They've had a huge rate of growth, and as of today, they are one of, if not the, largest property on the web. I already have a Pluralsight course on this, Getting Started with CloudFlare Security, and it really is an excellent service, a service that starts at $0 and 5 minutes to set up. Let me explain how it helps defend against DDoS attacks. Imagine we have three classes of traffic coming to a site: legitimate visitors, crawlers and bots, and of course our attackers. Now in many scenarios, all of this traffic just goes straight to what Cloudflare calls your naked website. So that is, there is nothing between these sources of traffic and the site itself. Maybe a basic firewall at most. What Cloudflare does is it sits here in the middle, and it allows the crawlers and bots. We kind of need those because we want to be discovered via search engines. But it blocks the attackers. And it does this by using many of the mechanisms we've already looked at in this module. One of the advantages that Cloudflare has is because they are so large and they route so much of the world's traffic through their infrastructure, they can get very, very good at reputation-based traffic analysis. Because they see so many malicious attacks, they already know what it looks like before it hits your site. That form of attack may have never come near your site before, but they've probably seen it somewhere else, and they've already created the signatures for it such that when the traffic is directed to your site, they can take appropriate action. Now that begs the question, what is appropriate action? What does Cloudflare do when they see potentially malicious traffic? Let's go and have a look. Cloudflare has 4 different possible ways of dealing with traffic that comes through its infrastructure. And the first is very simple. Just allow it. Let it through. They're confident enough that the traffic is good that it's going to go all the way through. The next level is to challenge. So what if they're not quite sure if that traffic is legitimate? Let me show you what a challenge looks like. You may have seen this before. You've certainly seen CAPTCHA before, but you may have seen this particular page, which is Cloudflare's. If they're not confident enough that an HTTP request is good, they'll present this page. The user has to check the I'm not a robot box. So this is Google's reCAPTCHA version 2 we're looking at here. And if they can solve the CAPTCHA, then Cloudflare will simply let the request go through. And they only do that once for the session. It's not too invasive, and it only targets users where there's not a high enough degree of confidence that they're legitimate. So for example, this works really well for layer 7 style DDoS attacks. And it works simply because that automated class of attack is not going to be able to solve this CAPTCHA. So that was their second way of responding, the challenge. The third way they have of responding is an interstitial page. I'll show you what that looks like. This is the interstitial page. And what this page actually does is runs a bunch of JavaScript in the client. And it's looking to establish whether the client is actually a legitimate browser or whether it's a bot. So if the client can't actually parse the JavaScript and then provide an appropriate response back to Cloudflare, the request won't go through. Like the challenge with the reCAPTCHA, this is somewhat invasive. You may have seen this one yourself before, because again, Cloudflare covers so much of the internet, you almost certainly have actually browsed through the infrastructure. And this pops up if they're just not quite confident enough with your traffic. By putting this between the user and the origin website, there is a very high degree of confidence that only legitimate traffic is going to hit the origin. So that is the interstitial page. The final defense that Cloudflare implements is to simply block the traffic. They have so little confidence in the legitimacy of the request, they're not even going to allow it through. No challenge, no interstitial page, it just doesn't go anywhere. This is a great example of a multifaceted defense based on reputation and progressive challenges. It is enormously effective at defending against DDoS attacks, and Cloudflare, more than probably any other provider on the web, has the ability to absorb even the largest DDoS attacks we've seen to date. And here's one of the best things about Cloudflare's model. That is a very rapid defense. It's not the sort of thing that I would want to have to do under duress. I'd much rather be able to plan my Cloudflare implementation when I didn't have the pressure of an attack on. But if my site was being completely knocked offline and I had the ability to do a 5-minute setup and start routing everything through CloudFlare's infrastructure, that is probably the first thing I'd do. So if you're interested in this approach, go and check out the course, Getting Started with Cloudflare Security. I really like this approach to defending against distributed denial of service attacks. And particularly if it takes you by surprise, this is probably going to be your best option. Now, there's one more thing I want to look at in this course, and that is not being taken by surprise. Let's go and take a look at preparing for DOS resiliency.